Hi there, I'm Will Studd, and thanks for watching. Here's another episode of Cheese Slices from our archives, proudly brought to you by Will Studd Selected Cheese.
Triple cream, Stilton cheddar, Emmental, mozzarella, camembert. I love a vegetam de Kiro cheese. Parmigiano, Reggiano, Roquefort, Brie de Meaux, and Monchegoro, River Blue, and Gouda. Asiago, Wensleydale, and Roquefort, Reblochon, Halloumi, Feta, Gorgonzola cheese. Oh, Montrejac, Pecorino, Swiss Gruyere. I love a vegetam de Kiro cheese.
Galicia is the greenest region in Spain, and for centuries its mild maritime climate and heavy rainfall have provided the perfect conditions for dairy farming. And that means one thing: great traditional cheese. Boasting over 1 million cows, Galicia lies in the extreme northwest corner of Spain, just above Portugal. And its lush pastures, rivers, dramatic Atlantic coastline and dark-tiled farmhouses inevitably raise more comparisons with the countryside of Brittany, Wales or Ireland than Spain. In fact, Galicia has strong links with these parts of Europe and their Celtic culture. And the dramatic cliffs of San Andreas Teixido were once considered to lie at the edge of the living world. Even today, legend has it that all Galicians must visit this mystical place whilst they're alive, or they'll pass through it in death. In the 9th century, the discovery of the bones of St. James, one of the 12 apostles, led to the construction of the magnificent Santiago de Compostela, which became one of the most important places for Christian pilgrims to visit after Rome and Jerusalem. Today, Galicia is home to more than 10,000 small and medium-sized farms, which produce a third of the cow's milk in Spain. Most of this is used for the liquid milk market, and only a tiny fraction is used for traditional cheesemaking, which almost became extinct during the 1950s, after Galicians deserted the hardships of farming in favour of life in the growing southern industrial cities. It's only recently that there's been a revival of interest in traditional cheesemaking, and the reason I've come here is to look at the region's 4 protected DOP cheeses, which owe much of their reputation to the sweetish, dense, fatty milk yielded by the native breed of dairy cow, known as the Galician blonde, or Rubia Gallega. To help me better understand this beautiful, isolated region, my friend Joaquin has offered to show me around.
Galicia has 4 DOP denomination cheeses, and they have the Tetilla cheese, then the Arzúa-Ulloa, the O Cebreiro, and San Simón cheese. These cheeses are all around produced in Galicia. The 4 cheeses, they are produced with cow's milk, mostly with raw milk. It's famous for its climate. This is the normal day. A little bit of rain, foggy day, cloudy. For the Galician people, this is a normal, beautiful day.
Joaquin and I are headed to the Terra Chá region in the province of Lugo, an area famous for its rolling hills, lush pasture and extensive birch forests, which once played an important role in traditional cheesemaking. Well, the weather's certainly living up to its reputation. I've come to visit a small farmhouse dairy that makes Galicia's oldest traditional cheese. Its name is San Simón, and it's smoked with wood from the local birch trees. The Fontelas family have been making this classic smoked cheese for more than 40 years. Cheesemaking begins each day with 1,600 litres of milk collected from the farm's herd of 70 cows. starters and animal rennet are added, and the curd is allowed to set over 30 minutes. After it's been carefully cut, the whey is gradually drained off. Boiling water is then added to scald the curds before they're pumped to a separate vat for hooping and draining. Each of the cloth-lined hoops are carefully filled by hand and placed into a hydraulic press for between 2 and 3 hours. After removal from the unusual shaped hoops, the young cheeses are placed in a brine bath overnight.
Nobody knows the origin of the shape of this cheese, but this is a replica of the original birch moulds used to form the cheese shape. And it looks a bit like a drinking goblet. And the theory goes it was a broken version of this that made the shape. And it fits.
To find out more about the way cheese was once made, we asked Xavier's mother how it was done.
Pues
We had wooden molds with little holes
igual que esta, que es de plástico, pero es de madera.
where we place the carbs and the milk manually,
Punta de madera. Entonces,
pressing at the same time to give form to the cheese.
cogía la masa del queso y se apretaba.
We took the cheese out of the mold
Entonces se metía en eso,
and we used hot water to make it smooth.
pulsaba para abajo, para que hiciera.
After, we finish it by hand to shape it
Y después se quitaba
and make it smooth.
y se le echaba agua bien calientita para alisarlo.
Later, we make
Para
little
ponerlo
holes with needles.
lisito. Y entonces con la mano se iba alisando, moldeando.
To encourage the cheese to lose the excess water.
Aguja se le hacía agujeros para que soltara el agua.
Racks of fresh salted cheese are placed into a special purpose-built smoking room, and shavings and timber from the local birch woods are used to cold smoke the cheese for several hours until it develops a rich ochre tan. This labour-intensive production process was one of the reasons that production of San Simón almost disappeared. But since it was awarded DOP origin protection status in the 1990s, this traditional Galician benchmark is making a comeback. The next dairy on our schedule was high in the mountains, almost 200 kilometres from Santiago to Compostela, and it takes its name from the village of O Cebreiro.
Hola, buenos días.
The origins of this very curious mushroom-shaped cheese are attributed to monks who built a hospital for pilgrims here in the 9th century. And it was so popular by the 18th century that it earned a reputation as one of the most expensive and hard-to-find cheeses in Europe. But like so many of Galicia's traditional cheeses, by the time this small dairy was built in 1989, it had almost disappeared. The soft white cheese is made using a long overnight process that requires the curds to be hung to drain in cloth bags. The following morning, they're mixed with salt in a large mixing bowl before being pumped into special-shaped hoops.
It's like creamy, fluffy cream cheese.
Ya, muy cremoso.
That's really good.
¿Por qué es debido a esta cremosidad?
Creamy, lactic with a little bit of salt.
Ya.
Secreto del fabricante.
Really nice, really nice.
You say that is a secret of the factory. You know?
La cremosidad es porque...
And this cheese disappeared entirely, didn't it? For hundreds of years?
Este queso desapareció por casi 100 años, ¿no?
Este solo se hacía para consumo, para consumir en casa. Ahora nada más lo hacían en casa para consumir, autoconsumo.
Yeah, this is a cheese that was only made for, to eat it at home. And then when the old people, stopped to produce at home, it wasn't a cheese that totally disappeared.
And he recreated it?
Exacto, y tú recuperaste
Recuperamos la forma, porque ya no hacían la forma, lo único que hacían era pues la masa en una bola y nada más. Hacían
he recovered like 25 years ago to recover again the cheese.
This is interesting. I now understand how they get the indentation in the bottom. They almost overfill these until they're over the top, and then when they collect all the cloth around it, it's actually the knot in the top of the cloth that makes the indentation.
Exactly. No, in the old times, they have the molds that they've been only round, and then what they did, they close the cloth, and then they put on a stone on the top, and then with the weight of the stone, they create this shape, this particular shape of this cheese. Now, of course, in the modern times, we have the shape done as well, and this was done manually, to create the shape at the older times.
So basically, it's just an overfilled cheese hoop with a stone on top.
The hoops are given one last pressing, and then they're ready for the market.
How is the cheese used?
This cheese they use normally in restaurants, mostly to do desserts, sweets, cakes, tarts, and as well you can eat it as by itself. But by itself, you need to use quince paste or marmalades or another kind of sweet too.
So it's not just a cheese to have it by itself with nothing. It's a cooking cheese.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. What he said. That it's a cheese that you need to use it or in the kitchen or to be, part of another goods.
A good example of this is the rich white Cebreiro sauce, which is often drizzled over the region's famous lechon slow-roasted pork for a truly mouth-watering combination.
It really fills your mouth, actually. It's lovely. It's a bit like a triple cream.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful flavour. Really nice and lactic, like a triple cream cheese. Lovely. And this is an old version here. How old's this?
¿Qué tiempo tiene este queso?
Este tendrá unos 60 días, pero necesitaba por lo menos otros 60.
This is 60 days, but he thinks that he says could be better with 120 days.
That's pretty interesting too.
Pero le falta, está la mitad.
For him, he prefers longer time. Yeah.
Really? That's quite sour. I mean, it's interesting, but it's a little bit sour. I think I'll stick with the young one.
Yeah, pero él prefiere el joven que el madurado.
Sí.
Due to its isolated geographic location, Galicia enjoyed relative autonomy from the rest of Spain until the rule of General Franco, which imposed strict restrictions on the teaching of the local Gallego dialect at schools in the region. The traditional and conservative Galicians deeply resented this, and since Franco's death, there's been a resurgence of interest in the region's cultural legacy. A perfect example of this can be found near the Pilgrim's Road at Palais de Rey, by the banks of the Arzúa River.
The most popular traditional DOP cheese enjoyed in Galicia is called Arzúa. There are hundreds of producers, but only one using organic milk, and they're based here in the village of Santiago de Alba.
In addition to its organic milk, yogurt and cheese production, Santiago de Alba has been sympathetically renovated to help preserve the traditional values behind a sustainable rural way of life.
I come from a family with a long tradition. My parents and my grandparents, they all made cheese. Because we are in an area where cheese was the principal source of life, with all the milk, one part was to feed the offspring and the rest was to produce cheese. In 1989 was when I decided to continue the tradition and I created Queixo. It was just before the official Denominación de Origen was created. That was created in 1995, and we started as a company in 1989. I have always been a consumer of ecological products, and from the beginning I have had a clear sense and respect for the environment. I see myself taking care of my cows and producing my own cheese in the traditional way, not mass production and using chemicals.
Donde el abono de las fincas fuera con abonos químicos, no me veía yo
I didn't see myself doing such an activity. And my values and personal philosophy were the main motivation to make the cheese in the more sustainable way.
The making of Arzúa begins with fresh, raw, organic milk collected from the native cows each morning. After starters and animal rennet are added, the milk is allowed to set, and the curds are then slowly cut. The excess whey is then drained off using gravity and manual pressing. The resulting slab of curd is then cut into block shapes and eventually moulded into the characteristic small round moulds. Typically, this cheese is aged for a minimum of 15 days. However, in some cases, this can be much longer.
This cheese is sometimes known as cheese of the land. And what I love about it is how soft and squidgy it is. It's very tactile when you press it. And you can eat it in lots of different ways, but what I like to do is find a really soft one and then just carve off the top like this. And inside, you have a soft, spongy cheese. It's just got a delicious, slightly sweet, creamy lactic flavour. It really is one of the most delectable, almost fresh cheeses you'll ever taste.
Visiting this small village and tasting its delicious cheese really gives you a sense of this region's rich local heritage. The most well-known traditional DOP cheese in Galicia is Queixo Tetilla, which was first written about in 1753. And it's no surprise that this strange-shaped cheese was politely called nipple cheese. In fact, the name literally means small breast. Campo Capela Dairy was originally formed in 1945 when a group of farmers decided they should create a cooperative. They now make Queixo Tetilla, butter, and a variety of fresh cheeses from the milk of over 1,400 grass-fed cows.
This is the traditional cheese of this cooperative. It's called Queixo, and basically it's just a cottage cheese made from pure raw milk that's been heated in these vats to 22 degrees and left for 24 hours whilst it does its thing. During that time, the cream is taken off the top to make beautiful butter, and then it's drained into these bags and held here for the next 24 hours.
The queixo is usually eaten fresh with honey or sugar and has a delicious creamy texture. To make tortilla, fresh raw milk is heated to between 28 and 32 degrees before rennet is added and it's allowed to set. The curds are then cut into large grains, and once they knit together and the whey has been removed, they are placed by hand into draining moulds.
So after the curds have come from here and are dumped into here, they knit together.
Yeah.
And then they're cut into these special moulds. And how do you get this weird sort of shape?
They say that in the past, in the famous cathedral of Santiago, Compostela, they have in the front a figure within a woman that the breast have been so big, the breast. And
a statue.
A statue, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then one of the priests of the church decide to cut and do a normal breast. And then the farmers around the city, they decide to create this shape.
So in other words, you think the priest thought it was inappropriate for worshippers to be looking at women's breasts whilst they were worshipping God.
Exactly.
So he chopped it off.
Yeah.
And the farmers in protest made this shape.
Yeah.
Can I have a little taste?
Yeah.
Tastes a bit like scrambled egg. It's got the same texture too. Very nice.
After pressing, the cheeses are salted in brine and aged up to 30 days before final packaging for sale. The taste is mild, with little or no acidity. and very faint notes of butter.
It's hard to believe that despite this region's long history of dairy farming, the art of making traditional cheese from ewes and goat's milk all but disappeared in the 1950s. But thankfully, things are starting to change with this farm.
In 2006, the Como Cabras cooperative was formed by 4 young people who wanted to escape the city and pursue the dream of a rural lifestyle. After building a small dairy a year later, they sold their first cheese. These days, their herd of 220 Murcia Granada goats produce enough milk to make 9 tons of cheese a year. These hardy goats are grazed on the local fields, and their feed is supplemented with grains and grasses, giving total control of the quality of milk produced for cheesemaking.
Este es el queso con el que empezamos. Este es el primer queso que hicimos.
This is the first cheese that they did.
Ah, okay.
Es un queso de pasta prensada. La elaboración es como el majorero,
Yeah.
como el gores.
It smells nice and sweet. Yeah, that's good. Very good. How do you say very good in Galician?
Muy bueno. En gallego, como dices, muy bueno.
Muy bon.
Muy bon.
Muy bon.
Muy bon.
Muy bon.
Exactly.
Muy bon.
Thank you.
Sí, yo creo que es muy mantecoso.
Yeah, it's like a battery as well. Well, he said that it's battery for him and so as well.
Yeah, it's good cheese, lovely, buttery.
Yeah.
Not battery, buttery.
Battery.
Buttery.
Battery.
Buttery.
Battery.
Okay, muy bon.
Muy bon. Exactly.
With dedicated families like this producing such great cheese from raw milk, the future of Galicia's goat's cheese seems assured. Galicia is perhaps Spain's most unusual region, with its Celtic culture, high rainfall, unique language, and over 1 million cows producing 1/3 of the country's milk. It's been wonderful to see the resurgence in traditional cheesemaking here, producing cheeses which are almost as unusual as the region itself.
Well, this really is a beautiful region of Spain. And after spending 10 days here filming cheese, I can really understand why pilgrims have been coming here for centuries.
Cheese slices Galicia.
Spain.
Spain, exactly, totally.
Can I cut the cheese? Okay.